Happy Feast! It is certainly a pleasure to be here, to be able to worship our God together at such a beautiful location. Certainly a very full room. It's great to see everyone here, and let's have a wonderful feast. As long as humans have existed, we have looked to the heavens above with wonder. We've used stars for navigation, our moon for keeping time, and the sun for warmth and growth. But in the last century, we've launched our first objects into space, put men on the moon, and launched telescopes that can see further and deeper into space than we have ever been able to before. Space has captured our imagination and, more recently, the pocketbooks of the ultra-rich. Popular movie franchises like Star Wars and Star Trek have created fan bases of over 100 million people. In these movies, human and alien species travel through space, discovering, protecting, and destroying planets all over the universe. In Job and Amos, two constellations, Pleiades and Orion, are mentioned specifically as being hung by God himself. Of course, we know that all that exists in heaven is of God's creation and is reflected in the creation story in Genesis. The universe as we understand it today is a vast expanse that is so large it is humanly impossible to comprehend just how big it is. We do have ways, though, that we can try to fathom just how big some of the bodies that are within it actually are. So through the help of the AV team, of which I am typically in my home congregation, they're going to help me out. We're going to watch a video, it's very short, to look at some of the scale of what exists in the universe. This video, I want to say a special thanks to a YouTube creator. His name is Alex Evett, and he allowed me permission to show this video to you today. universe. That does not mean it ends there. It's just simply as far as we can see. A video like that brings some context into the awesomeness of our God, his creativity, and his power. One of the verses that was referred to in the opening message last night from Mr. Shaby fits this very perfectly, over in Psalm 145, verse 3. Great is the Lord, and greatly to be praised, and his greatness is unsearchable. All of that expanse, size, and beauty, and the reality is, it's only what we can see today. And even that, in most cases, it is just renderings of what we can see with the different telescopes that we have out there. This is just a small example, and if we look at even how we had to travel here for the feast. My family, we drove 13 hours to get here. We moved a little tiny bit on the map of the globe. Some of you would have flown, and again, it looks like just a little bit on our globe. And then you saw how the earth just shrank away into nothing based on the size that we're seeing in the universe. Why would God create all of this uninhabitable space that we see when we look up towards the stars? Let's turn over to Deuteronomy. If you completed the reading of Deuteronomy just before the feast, as we were doing as a church, you would have read this verse. Maybe you would have just kind of read past it. Deuteronomy 4, verse 19. Deuteronomy 4, verse 19. And take heed, lest you lift your eyes to heaven, and when you see the sun, the moon, and the stars, all the host of heaven, you feel driven to worship them and serve them, which the Lord your God has given to all the peoples under the whole heaven as a heritage. Heritage here is talking about an inheritance. The heavens have been given to all the peoples of the world as an inheritance. The King James Version says that God has assigned the heavens to all the nations of the world. All that vastness, all the stars, all those planets, nebulas, what is behind those black holes, we don't even know. All of the heavens are our inheritance. These fall holy days represent that preparation of all the people of the world to accept our inheritance, the universe. God is incredibly generous and has big plans for his family. It is impossible to comprehend his generosity when contemplating the heavens. And rather than seeing the awesomeness of the heavens as being something to worship, it should humble us that God has created those heavens for us and that he has invited us to be here as part of his family. So hopefully, while you're here in North Carolina, you will get a chance to walk along the beach in the evening during your time and take a look up. Look at the beauty that is draped above us. And remember that everything out there is your inheritance. We have a great God, and he is infinitely generous. As part of these holy days, we take up free will offerings as instructed to spread that awesome message, that message of hope and the plan of God. Since we're in Deuteronomy, let's turn over to Deuteronomy 16. Deuteronomy 16, starting in verse 16. 3 times a year, all your males shall appear before the Lord your God in the place which he chooses, at the Feast of Unleavened Bread, at the Feast of Weeks, and at the Feast of Tabernacles. And they shall not appear before the Lord empty-handed. Every man shall give as he is able, according to the blessing of the Lord your God, which he has given you. So here we are in that third time of the year where we're not to appear before the Lord empty-handed. But I'd like to also go over to 2 Corinthians. Let's read in 2 Corinthians 9. 2 Corinthians 9, and we'll begin in verse 16. 2 Corinthians 9, verse 6. Starting in verse 6, "But this I say, he who sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and he who sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. So let each one of us give as he purposes in his heart, not grudgingly or of necessity, for God loves a cheerful giver. And God is able to make all grace abound toward you, that you, always having sufficiency in all things, may have an abundance for every good work. As it is written, he has dispersed abroad, he has given to the poor. His righteousness endures forever." Verse 10, "Now may he who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food supply and multiply the seed you have sown and increase the fruits of your righteousness, while you are enriched in everything for all liberality, which causes thanksgiving through us to God. For the administration of this service not only supplies the needs of the saints, but also is abounding through many thanksgivings to God, while through the proof of this ministry they glorify God for the obedience of your confession to the gospel of Christ, and for your liberal sharing with them and all men. And by their prayer for you, who long for you because of the exceeding grace of God in you, thanks be to God for his indescribable gift." God does not need our offerings, but it is a test of our attitudes. And as we have just looked at, we are looking at an indescribable gift, a part of the God family and an inheritance that is almost impossible to comprehend. From a creator whose greatness is unsearchable.